Attention listeners, be advised that this show is an immersive audio experience.
What do we think about that?
Yes, yeah, okay, that was one.
Yeah?
Let's move on.
Let's do it.
The Tale of Santa Muerte is an immersive, epic adventure audio drama set in the early 18th century, the Golden Age of Piracy.
As we follow a young female pirate captain in her search for infamy, she takes on the name and visage of the Saint of Death, Santa Muerte.
This comes back to haunt her and her crew as they become the target of an agent of the Spanish Inquisition.
At its core, the story is about a person with an identity crisis. Someone who's been living their legend for so long, they begin to believe it, and it affects her relationship with the people that help create that legend.
This is a character who would have lived a few hundred years ago, but her personality and her motivations are driven by a lot of very modern concepts.
And in many ways, it's a parallel to what we all live and how we project our lives on the internet today.
She has a single drive, she has a target she wants to hit, and she wants to be rich and famous.
She wants to hear people talking about her in a tavern. She wants to have people read about her in newspapers and in books and penny dreadfuls. She wants to be the thing that people are talking about, whether it's true or whether it's not.
One of the ways we wanted to start the story is for you as the audience to meet Santa Muerte in the same way that people within the world meet her, and that's through the legend. And so in our first scene, you're in the tavern hearing the ghost stories and the horror stories, and then we ultimately meet her in that setting.
I was just so blown away by how quickly I was immersed in that world and how quickly I was rooting for these characters.
Much like Santa Muerte wanted people to hear stories of her legend, I grew up hearing similar types of stories. I spent much of my childhood playing on the beaches of North Carolina, where Blackbeard ran his ship, the Queen Anne's Revenge, aground. And so I would be told bedtime pirate stories and spend my summers going on treasure hunts with my brothers and my cousins. And that upbringing, paired with the charming adventure films of the late 90s and early 2000s, like The Mask of Zorro and Pirates of the Caribbean, made it my dream as a child to one day weave an epic pirate tale of my own.
I grew up in the American Southwest with the mythos and the legends of Billy the Kid and Jesse James. So what I connect to with this story is this idea of living outside of society, living in a world where rules don't matter. You make your own path. And that's very much what Santa Muerte has done. Our pirate captain has made a world in which she can do whatever she wants. Okay, so now I'm gonna have you listen to one of your favorite parts.
Is this,
I'm not gonna tell you what it is.
Oh, you're not gonna tell me? Okay.
Oh, this is an exciting part.
Across the railing, making walkways between the vessels.
Okay.
A pair of booted feet strides confidently across the central plank.
Gentlemen of Spain!
You can really feel him there.
You're going to have one hell of a story to tell your families after this.
Seeing him perform
Your
this
wives will
in the studio
hold
was
you
so fun.
closer. Your children will tell their friends of how their fathers faced the dreaded pirate witch and walked away unscathed.
Tom's dialogue.
Your
Gavin's performance here is just so
never
wonderful.
run dry as men at the pub ask to hear your tale of Santa Muerte.
I always thought of Josiah as a theater kid. He's always gonna take any opportunity to ham it up.
The scene to me really showcases the cocktail of darker themes and violence that we have so prominently, but with a healthy serving of charm, if you will. That was always very important to us since the original inception of the idea.
And she will take as she pleases.
Mark and I maybe had like these little inklings of a pirate story, something fun, something big. And Tom is the perfect person for that kind of story. He's always had such amazing, grand ideas, and his voice really lends itself to something like pirates, something on the high seas.
Madeline and I have been working with Tom for over a decade, and when we reached out to him about this, we gave him one prompt: pirates. And so Tom's one sentence response was,
I'm inclined to acquiesce to your request. Yeah, of course I said that.
Mark and Madeline were like, hey, we're gonna go on this hike, for a couple days. We're out in nature and, having a great time. I remember very distinctly, I was like sitting in a hammock and they were like, hey, you should read this.
Mark and Madeline and I were hiking some time ago and the endorphins were going and we were having a really great time. And suddenly they turned around and they said, hey, we have this project idea we want to pitch to you.
I sat in a hammock and I read the 13 pages that would become the open to chapter 1.
And all they said after that was one word and I was already in. Pirates.
Shiver me timbers.
Perfect. All right, we're done.
I remember very distinctly getting to a certain point in that script and bolting upright, just screaming like, what the f***?
And I was like, oh, you got there. And it was like the twist at the end of the first 15 minutes.
And I was so impressed by it, and it took over the rest of our trip. We talked about it for the rest of the time, basically.
My business partner on a separate production company is Seth Fowler, and he came to me with a script, and he said, hey, Mark, Madeline, and Tom, they wrote this, and I want you to read it and tell me what you think.
Because I was so excited by just the story as it had been woven into these 13 pages of script, and immediately was like, where's the rest? But at that time, there was nothing else. It was just that.
So I read the script, and it took about 5 seconds. I went to Seth and I said, look, there needs to be more.
When Seth and Justin came back to us and said that they wanted to be a part of the team, it really gave us the confidence to move forward and really pull those words off the page and make it a reality.
We didn't quite know where it was going to go, but we knew that there needed to be more.
This project has been 4 years in the making. And in those 4 years, it's taken on so many different forms and has evolved many times.
The original conception was simply a short film. It was just, a little 10-minute story about some pirates in a tavern. But from there, it blossomed and it started to grow.
And then as it evolved and we were coming up with ways to present the material to people, we discovered this audio-only format.
Sometimes when you have an obstacle or a hurdle, the solution to that leads you somewhere else, but it ends up being a miracle. And while we didn't always know that the path would lead us where we are today, we always knew that just by taking one step forward, the right path would open up.
It opened the world. The limitations were lifted, the possibilities were expanded.
At this point, if you want to see a cannonball rip through the hull of a ship, a cannonball can rip through the hull of a ship.
Cannonball tears through the wall.
When we decided to really discover the story in an audio format, creating a character and creating a scenario in which it feels natural that the story is being told to us allowed us to create images in people's heads and kind of keep them in line with where we wanted them to go.
When we decided to have a narrator, I realized that I was going to have to change the voice on the page to a certain extent.
I like to think of the narrator as bowling alley bumpers. Your mind wanders around and we want you to have the freedom to explore and create the image of these characters in your own mind.
This man is weaving this great tale and pulling us in, but how much truth is there in this story?
From the very beginning, we knew we wanted a non-neutral narrator, and one that was very much biased towards furthering the legend of Santa Muerte and extending her tales.
How do we take stage direction from a traditional screenplay and turn that into narration?
Tom's words have always been very visual. The way he writes sounds like someone telling you a story. It just made sense.
Translating this mechanical text of where the characters move and how the camera moves and all that to a narration kind of resulted in a new character, if not the lead character at this point.
And so now we kind of have this feeling that the narrator's telling the story at a campfire or a tavern himself, bringing you into his imagination, into his world.
The tobacco in her pipe flares. A torch lights up the night. A gang of pirates moves through the jungle. Not your romantic, hard-speaking kind. The real motherfuckers.
Tony saying that line
In the
is
center
so
of the group
funny.
is a figure whose face always
I remember that
seems to
line.
stage.
We wanted to be in there so bad because it was something where you could let the audience know this isn't your Disney pirates. This is some real shit.
So sorry, I was just gonna listen to that into oblivion.
If I don't stop her. We got super lucky in that we got Tony Amendola as our narrator, and I honestly can't tell you how pumped I am about it. The Mask of Zorro is the reason, I didn't tell you this, Tony, but the reason I tell stories, the reason I ever picked up a camera or moved here in the first place is The Mask of Zorro. It captured my imagination as a child, and the romance and the danger and the mystery of that movie completely inspired the way that I want to tell stories, and is the reason I decided to get into the creative field at all.
Working with him was so much fun. He had so many insights and brought so much to the character.
He brings the world to life in a way that I think we all only could have imagined at the beginning.
I do remember a very cool moment that I shared with Rob, of course, as a fellow producer. It was the first day that Tony was in the studio. We'd all been working for this for so long, you know, almost 4 years, right, of continuing to take that next step. And Tony opened his mouth and said the first words.
When you're ready, if you could just read a couple of lines, we'll do a sound test.
The Tale of Santa Muerte. A frightful sight.
I remember that.
He grabbed my shoulder.
Yeah,
and I was
just
like
like sunk in, and Rob and I like full body though. Rob and I were like, fuck, like we both full body rolls. And yeah, I mean, we all shared that, you know, it's just like the look around the room of like, oh my God. Because it was just the moment when it all went from this thing we've all had in our conscious for so long to holy cow, it's here in front of us and happening. And of course, through the voice of Tony, that was pretty special.
These first 3 chapters are just the pilot of a 20-chapter season. So we're just scratching the surface.
There's so much to come in this story.
There is hubris and fulfillment and consequence.
When we see perhaps the effects of this legend on them and her choices and how they affect the people she knows.
Much like we went through an evolution in our own process of discovering this audio drama immersive experience format, Santa Muerte goes through a kind of a metamorphosis of her own.
It's no longer a rollicking pirate adventure. Now it is a mission to reclaim her reputation.
The relationships that come out of these really disparate people thrown together.
While it is called The Tale of Santa Muerte, it's ultimately a very strong ensemble piece.
These people are a found family, but they were found by one person, and she sees something different in all of them. She found them for different reasons.
As we go through it, we will immerse ourselves into the crew.
It's amazing what it is, and it's amazing what is still left to be uncovered of this story.